everyone, and welcome back to the Astral Tourist, where I keep logs of out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming states, and the quieter structures that sometimes appear when consciousness loosens its grip on the physical. This episode is a full moon update. Since we just had a full moon, I wanted to give it a go. So regular listeners know I don't treat full moons as guarantees of any kind, but they do tend to coincide with increased vividness, longer duration, astral projections, and more autonomous transitions. And not just for me, from what I've read online and such. So people experimenting with astral projection and lucid states, I always recommend try during the full moon for a few days before up to a few days after. And I know that many of you do plan attempts around them. And so I wanted to document what came up for me this cycle. I always try to. I might have missed one or two along the year in 2025, but I always try to give a full moon update if I have one. So what follows isn't one continuous journey, but a short sequence of experiences leading up to something really restorative and unexpected. So this first one, the first log, happened a couple of nights ago, before the actual full moon, but a waxing moon. I had a brief but extended astral projection. Both of those in the same line. Unfortunately, most of the finer details didn't survive when I woke up, which happens sometimes. But the structure of the experience is still pretty clear. So earlier on in that evening, I met a woman walking two small Shih Tzu dogs. And we were in a city, I'm not sure which one. She handed one of the dogs to me, like almost immediately. And I remember trying to explain to her that, hey, we're astral projecting. And it seemed like she wanted me to take care of the dog for a while. And so I was trying to explain to her, hey, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So, that it didn't seem to surprise her. She seemed to understand. And the dog has a familiar feeling to me too. I've seen this dog before, I think, and I've never had a Shih Tzu dog or anything. So I don't know, maybe it's from another lifetime. I could only guess, but it did seem familiar. And I was like, oh, hi. And I was petting the dog and she seemed fine with me, just visiting with it until I could wake up. And this dog was extremely well behaved and really light feeling, almost weightless. So I wasn't sure I was astral projecting by then, which I already knew I would have been by that kind of a reality check. And so I just kind of carried it while exploring this city in full daylight. It was afternoon and there was time dilation and it was very noticeable. The afternoon felt long, more like an entire weekend, just walking around in the sun and the city. And there weren't many people around, like that one woman with the two dogs. And even, sometimes I would see something like at the corner of my eye, but otherwise it was just the city in the afternoon. And at one point, I think my consciousness was in and out. I tried to find a bus, and I don't remember why anymore. And I realized I'd crossed to the wrong side of the city. And I do remember asking some people, well, where's the bus at? And they were laughing about it because they were like, it's all the way over on the other side. And I knew that I could sleep in longer if it took me some more time to get back. Usually a bus sign is like, you're going to wake up in a while. That's like, sometimes that's my callback sign instead of an actual pull, like people report on their cord. And I'm like, okay, but I still have time. It's only a little bit pull. It's only like a long duration space in this area. And so I was like, okay, so pull isn't immediate here, but it's going to happen eventually. So I kept going and it felt like almost another day getting across the city, but I never saw nighttime or anything. It was always afternoon. And I got to the bus and I sat down and I placed the dog in a seat across from me. The seats were facing each other. kind of like they would on a train, only in a bus. And that's when it shapeshifted into an older looking woman, like in her 60s or 70s, maybe I should say middle-aged. I don't know. And I was kind of surprised by that, but then it still felt like a dog energy to me. It didn't feel like a human, making a trick, making it seem like they were a dog. It felt like a dog was there, but showing me something, telepathically. And so I just kind of nodded, and this is a really peaceful dog, and it had a totally peaceful expression. And it was just like showing me this image. And thinking back on it, I feel like it was showing me one of its memories, maybe how one of its previous owners looked. I can only guess, but I think that's what it was. It was showing me somebody that it loves. And it really felt more like a share than any big message or anything. It wasn't like looking around for her. It was a very peaceful dog. I think the night before, a couple of nights ago, I just have a vague memory of astral projecting overseas somewhere in Asia. I'm not sure where. It was in a kind of a bar type place, a little bit rowdy, but not too rowdy. And there were American military personnel in there just having fun. I didn't overhear anything, I shouldn't have or anything. And it's only just the briefest memory. So I think I got overseas that night. Unfortunately, again, not much memory recall for that one. So that, sums up the last, couple of nights leading up to last night. So last night, on the full moon itself, I had multiple autonomous astral projections. In one, just before separation, I felt a hand on my back. And I recognized the timing immediately and didn't react. I treated it as a threshold sensation and let it pass. So just a quick interjection for those that don't know what I'm talking about. This is the guardian of the threshold phenomenon. So in altered states like lucid dreaming, deep meditation, or astral projection experiences, people sometimes report sensations or figures that appear right before a transition. Like the shadow man, or pressure, or a sudden spirit, or a feeling of touch like I had last night, a presence, imagery that feels like a boundary marker. And the important thing is not to react immediately if you want to astral project. Otherwise, you're just going to wake yourself up and upset yourself. And this is just psychologically speaking. This is often understood as the mind testing coherence as it's crossing from one state to another. I mean, after all, you don't really want to be sleepwalking or something like that, right? So this is actually a good thing. And most of the time, this is not an entity in and of itself. I'm not saying that people never experience an entity in their bedroom or something, but most of the time, in most of the reports I read, it sure seems like it's this guardian of the threshold most of the time. That's all I'm saying. I mean, everybody has their own experiences. I can only speak for myself, and I have seen entities from time to time, but this time I knew it. I mean, I know what my own guardians kind of feel like, after all these years. And you'll learn what yours are as you go along too. So it's more of a stability checkpoint. And, the experience will either deepen after that or collapse depending on your reaction. And I just am covering this because that's what happened to me with the whole hand on my back thing. So in that case, even though I had the proper reaction, I popped out of my body and got pulled right back in. So this is not uncommon. Sometimes I have to try multiple times and make a good amount of distance away from my physical body. So that's unfortunately kind of normal for me sometimes. And it's just, I have to keep trying and trying and trying and trying until I get the winning astral projection going on. So we'll call that a warm-up, right? And so in another one last night, I tried the rollout method, which worked, and I rolled on out of my body across the bed and found myself laying next to my physical form. My significant other was there, and so was a dog. And, we don't have a dog. This was a large dog of some kind, maybe like a golden retriever or a lab. I think more like a golden retriever. It was really surprising to me because I haven't seen this dog before. So I just pet the dog for a few minutes and I got pulled back to my body right away again. So, it was a surprise there. I guess I popped into an adjacent reality there where we have a dog. Anyway, moving on. So this one I'm calling the Emerald Essence Liminal Marsh. So later in the evening, I autonomously projected without making an effort. I was too tired to bother by that. And, this time lucidity dropped during the transition. I had like the, blackout phase, like some people report having. I'm not the only one that gets it. Not unconsciousness, just a loss of, I know I'm out there, but I'm not really keeping full track. Like I can feel that I'm out there somewhere in space or time or something. And then everything fills in again. And when awareness returned, I was floating. I was nice and warm and I was floating. And as all the details came back in, I saw that I was in a warm body of water filled with reeds. So many reeds. The temperature was perfect, not too hot, not too cool. And it felt like being wrapped in a soaked, sun-warmed blanket. And the water was just kind of, holding me effortlessly. I was just kind of floating in it and being wrapped up in it. And, I wasn't fully submerged, just partially. And the colors carried an emerald quality, but it was all really muted. Not bright or glowing, more like filtered green light with occasional soft glimmers. And the reeds were moving very gently, and I could hear them sometimes as they brushed against each other. And as I've covered before, I don't always hear very well in the astral, but I could hear them. So that was really cool for me. There were no other beings that I could sense, no animals, no fish or anything, no structures except for the water and the reeds and the warmth and the sound. So I somehow got into this wonderful restorative area. And it was a nice restorative healing area, a place where nothing is really required. I was just being held there. It felt like being held, but, I know I was choosing also to be there. So lucidity was stable, but unforced. There was no sense of urgency, no directive to move on. And, I really didn't want to move on. I was like, wow, this feels so good. I'm just going to stay as long as I can. So I returned to the physical. Eventually I got pulled back, and it was kind of a slow motion pulling back. So again, with this time dilation with this full moon. So two experiences there with the time dilation. Time was elongated in both of these places. And even the pullback was really slow in both locales. So that's a feature there for this moon. And, the whole tone was wonderful across them both. Longer astral projections require a lot of energy. So I have been making occasional requests for, Jupiter and trying to get back into outer space, but I know I need this type of rest as well if I'm going to do that again later. So I didn't fight this at all. Again, I loved it. It felt really good. And sometimes we just need to rest like that. And if you find a place in the astral like that to rest and it's that nice, definitely stay for a while, why not? So thanks for listening. If you experiment around full moons, I'd love to hear how your experiences compare, especially if you've encountered rest-oriented environments rather than, the more exciting exploration zones. And I like to point out that this type of thing is normal. Not every astral experience is going to be some fantastical journey. And I think some people get disappointed and stop trying to astral project because they're expecting some kind of wonderland every single time. And no, it's not every single time. This all requires a lot of practice. You need to rest up and build up certain types of energy to be able to do those longer ones. And, you'll learn about places like these or find some on your own. it's more of a practice. It's not all ecstasy and adventure. So I'll leave that at that. Like, subscribe, and share if these logs are useful to you. Until next time, happy astral travels.